So I'm going to do a short presentation about API first and open banking within ABN AMRO, just to give you a bit of an idea on which kind of company we are. ABN AMRO is one of the big three banks within the Netherlands. We are having multiple business lines, so retail banking, private banking, commercial banking, and corporate and institutional banking. And just to give you a bit of an idea, we're the top three player in the Netherlands. We're the prime bank for about 20% of the Dutch population. The number one in new mortgage production, and the number two in savings. So that gives you a bit of an impression on the bank if you didn't know the company. Then a bit about Dutch people as a whole, and these are old numbers, as you can see by the years. But what you see is that Dutch people are very digital minded. So the online and mobile banking penetration in the Netherlands is always been very high. Compared to a lot of other European countries, and that's also why the amount of branches that we have in the country are steadily going down over the years. Now what's interesting is that while these channels we are very much aware of, new channels are popping up as well. And just like in every European country, there is a new regulation, for instance, which is PSD2, Payment Service Directive 2, and it's interesting how that regulation might change banking in the near future. So all of you will use internet banking and mobile banking channels of the bank themselves, but with Payment Service Directive 2, you're also being enabled to use a third-party application to take a view on your bank account or to initiate a payment. And this regulation came into play in the Netherlands from September 2019, and the first integrations have been built. And that's also one of the reasons why APIs started to grow, or at least open APIs started to grow within banks and the banking industry because of this regulation. Before, APIs was definitely a topic within a bank, but then we were mainly talking about internal APIs and open APIs and opening up your own backend systems to third parties. That wasn't really a topic till a couple of years ago, and that has been growing steadily. And within ABN AMRO, I've been one of the few people pushing that thoughts and the technology into place, to get the bank ready for this regulation, but also for next steps. The point that we're currently at is that the regulation is in play and the APIs are available, but the applications that third parties build are not very motivating yet for customers to share their data, and also customers are not used to sharing their transaction data, so they actually still need to get their minds around whether it's useful or tricky to share their data from the bank to a third party. And we will see over the next few years how that will evolve. If I talk about Payment Service Directive 2, then explicitly the access to the account part is the most interesting part of that regulation. And basically it tells European banks to provide 3 application programming interfaces to third parties. And those third parties, they need to have a PSD2 license to get access to those APIs. It's The first API is the account information service. That's basically where you spend your money on. And if I would have this information from multiple banks, I can get a multi-bank overview and provide you with deeper insights, how you can save your money or which loans you can get or not. Payment initiation service is to initiate a payment from a third-party application. So for instance, if I have a loyalty card, then theoretically I could connect that to the bank and the loyalty card could become a payment card. But still you need to have all the licenses into play, but then you could start building these kind of integrations. And the last one is confirmation of availability funds, and that's basically telling whether you have enough money on your bank account for a certain action, yes or no. And Europe wanted these APIs in place to stimulate the digital economy within the finance sector, to increase competition between banks and fintech. And that was the basic thought in 2012, 2013, when Europe started to think about this regulation. Nowadays, you see that big tech will be one of the big players that might use these APIs, and that's still something that we're figuring out as an industry, what we think about that. And you also see that the same regulators are now deep diving into those big tech and what they might do with these APIs. So it's interesting how that playing field comes into play, because the actual goal was a level playing field, but with big techs in play, that might be different. Further harmonization and better protection for the customer, and better protection for the customer is a very important one. Why API technology was implemented, because in a lot of European countries, APIs is not the way you share your transaction data, but third parties are having access to your transaction data via screen scraping. And everybody with some basic understanding of technology understands that there are risks involved with screen scraping, and that's why APIs are a much better solution, a preferred solution to share your transactions, because there's much more control for the customer which data is shared, for how long, and who has access to it. And that's why we're investing in API technology as well. So what we see is that internet banking has been a digital channel that has been around for years now. Since 2000, we launched our first version of internet banking. Then mobile banking came into play in 2011. And the interesting part is that in 2000, we needed to think about how do we digitize the services that we have in our branches. Then with mobile banking, you are thinking about how do I create services and customer experiences that work via a mobile screen, but these are still around your own channels. And with the new channel that comes into play, which is API banking, you need to start thinking in ecosystems, and how do I innovate with third parties, and also how do I create backends that are not only able to service my own channels, but it is also scalable enough to service third-party channels. So then cloud technologies come into play, and that's why API is such an interesting domain to be at this point, because a lot of industries are going through this different path of technology and different channels that will rise up in the upcoming years. Then I also asked Christoph, how do you sell the importance of developer portals internally? And I needed to convince a lot of people within the company to invest in APIs, but a lot of these business directors, etc., a couple of years ago, they didn't think in APIs, and to explain to them what an API is, this appeared to be a very useful slide to just show what other companies have been building with APIs. So to get their understanding around that, Google Maps, that was something that Google built themselves. They started to service that capability to third parties. And only because Google did that, Uber was able to build their company on top of what someone else already has built. Just like they needed to have a payment solution and went for a PayPal solution. Sonos wasn't interested in selling the music platform itself. They wanted to build upon what Spotify already built. And then showing what an API does and how code works to those business directors was very helpful to get that understanding around and why this is an important technology to invest in. And then next, it's also to share the different mindset that you need to have in this transformation. So it's not about centralized innovation, everything is inside in your own company and everything is owned and closed. It's much more about how can you become a shared and open company, invent together, innovate together with third parties, and be a networked company instead of a old-fashioned monolithic company. And of course, a lot of consultants are trying to push that sense of urgency into the banking sector as well. So by not sharing numbers that 50% of the banks will fail to exploit open banking, it's also sharing that sense of urgency to companies why they need to invest. Okay. If I then come back to ABN AMRO and our own strategy, you see that this is our main strategy. So banking for better for generations to come. That's the main purpose of our bank. And then underneath we have 3 pillars. So support our clients transition to sustainability, reinvent the customer experience, and build a future-proof bank. And you can see that especially the last 2 pillars, those are important pillars where APIs come into play, because if I have a lot of APIs available, I can more easily reinvent the customer experience. Developers can create all kinds of integrations. And with APIs, you also disconnect the front end and the back end, so that future-proof banking is then more easily to build. And if you then see which kind of challenges we as a bank come across at this point, it's also showing that APIs have an important play. So we develop mobile ecosystems. So multiple applications need to work together. Internet banking and access online for our corporate customer, we are rebuilding them from the ground up to a more modern architecture. And of course, APIs are needed for that. We're building applications together with fintech. So for instance, Tink is an aggregation and a categorization capability for multi-bank overviews. And together with them, we built the GRIP application. And again, we need APIs to work with these kind of fintech. And lastly, a lot of European banks currently are being challenged by how their know your clients processes and money laundering processes is being handled, and they want to cooperate together to create a more safer financial ecosystem. If you think about these use cases, you see multiple kind of APIs, and within ABN AMRO, these are the ones that we define. So you have the internal APIs, and then we think about enterprise APIs, the APIs that ABN AMRO is building for ABN AMRO teams to reuse. Third-party APIs, so those are, for instance, the Chamber of Commerce APIs that we consume from a third party and then provide internally to a lot of teams. And then we have a whole spectrum of open APIs, so API products that third parties can use to help us innovate. For instance, the service provider APIs, and those are the PSD2 APIs that I just discussed. We have partner APIs, so those could be APIs that we, for instance, provide to partners like Tink, so they can build an application together with us. We have a lot of corporate customers that want to innovate on their own bank accounts and automate all kind of payment processes. For instance, reconciliation, and with our customer APIs, they can build these kind of integrations. And for instance, you can think of APIs like ATMs or branches, etc. Those are that's public information that everybody could use. And just like the question before, should every API have a monetization strategy on its own? I don't think so. So I see that it makes sense to provide some APIs for free if that is smoothing the ride for your retail customers via third-party channels, for instance. And for others, you want developer to pay or to pay the developer because there are indirect business models on top. So it's really API specific, per API specific, what the strategy should be. What's then interesting is that for years banks have been developed based on a more monolithic strategy, a monolithic architecture. So we had our own capabilities, we built our own products and services around them, then we built our own channels, and then came the ABN AMRO channels, the ABN AMRO clients. And you see with this transformation that we grow much more into an architecture where still ABN AMRO has own capabilities, then third-party provide their capabilities as well. Together we build products and services on top, but it can also be that we resell third-party products and services via our own channels or via third-party channels. So then you come to much more of a Z kind of architecture where APIs come into play to consume third-party services, but also to provide your services to third parties. And this kind of thinking and this kind of technology architecture is really different compared to what we did in the past. One of the channels, and that's also the channel that Christoph talked about, is the developer portal. And what we find important in this understanding is that the developer of a third party becomes a new customer for ABN AMRO, because APIs can be our new products. The developer, you need to service them as your new customer as well. And that's why we launched in 2017 our developer portal. So this is actually the second version, which we launched about a month ago, where we provide API products. So if I click on API products on the page, I will end up as a page where you can see all the APIs that we're currently providing. And for instance, the PSD2 APIs are available, but we're also providing commercial APIs like business account insight and business notification. And those are APIs that we are providing to our corporate customers to automate their payments services. And we have Tiki APIs available and a foreign exchange trade API. And I will deep dive a bit more in those Tiki APIs. Before I'm deep diving into those Tiki APIs, it's also interesting to see how we consume the APIs that other banks are developing. So as we, in the Netherlands, we were the first major bank to launch a developer portal and also to provide the PSD2 APIs. But now other banks are opening up their APIs as well, and we are able to make our own internet and mobile banking channels to become multi-bank. So the services that we provide to our own customers with, for instance, categorization of your transactions and where you spend your money on, and to give advice. We also provide that same application, same technology to, for instance, customers of ING and Rabobank, and they can use the GRIP application as well. And one application that we built and that has been very successful over the years is Tiki. So within the Netherlands, a lot of people want to go Dutch. So I'm in a restaurant and I pay the bill for multiple friends, and then always you get the awkward conversation, how do I get my money back? And with Tiki, ABN AMRO came with a easy application where you can create a payment request, send that via WhatsApp to your friends. Everybody opens up their Tiki payment request, and you can pay easily without owning or downloading that application. You can pay it via your browser. And this has been very successful. So we're currently at about 6 or 7 million users in the Netherlands. So about 50% of the Dutch population has this application on their mobile app, on their mobile. And that has been a good opportunity to start thinking about business opportunities as well. What we saw is that businesses want to send those payment requests as well. And while retail customers can use the payment or the Tiki app for free, it's for businesses, it's really a solution for a lot of their processes. And we can charge customers or corporate customers to send those payment requests because it's actually solving a lot of the issues that they have, for instance, for donations or when they are chatting with a customer in, to get a payment for a service that they provide. And previously we did that with an app or via a website, but of course those corporates want to automate stuff, and that's why we launched the Tiki API as well, so that when a corporate wants to send a Tiki payment request, they don't need to go into the Tiki portal, but actually can send that payment request directly from their accounting software or from their CRM packages or from their mobile applications. And this is really ramping up at this moment. So you see that more and more Tiki business customers are implementing that API as well. And we want more teams to build these kind of channels, new customer experiences, and new API products. So that's also why we internally start to grow a API community, an API first community, where we motivate a lot of ABN AMRO teams to build these kind of API products. So internal APIs and open APIs, API products for third parties. And we explain them that the API should be easy to discover, easy to understand, easy to combine, business meaningful and reusable. And that's all basic knowledge for a lot of you. But the difficult point about these topics is it's easy to talk about, but it's difficult to do. So how do you make an easy to consume API? How do you make something that is complex? How do you make that easy to consume? How do you document that in such a way that a third party is actually able to integrate your application or your API into their software without any questions or manual work? And that takes a lot of work. And that's also something that I want to leave you by. Once you start on this journey, you will learn that it's quite a journey, and it will last for multiple years. I've been starting in this topic in 2014, and still myself and the company learns a lot on how this a new channel should grow and which kind of products should be in. And that's also why we like to have these talks with these kind of communities, with you guys, to learn from you what you would like from a bank, what you expect from our API products, but also to share to you our experiences so you can start your journey. And who knows that in the future we could innovate together. That was my story. I'm looking forward to your questions.
Woo. Woo.
Thank you.
So I should return a favor, right? So,
yeah.
How has the position of senior management changed through the years now that you've been running this journey? Like is there like a clear buy-in now? Have they seen the light, or is it sometimes still a struggle?
It's definitely still a struggle sometimes. So when we started, you need to get the budgets in, and I've shared you the multi-banking solutions. And when we started with our API program, especially getting the technology in place to consume the APIs of other banks and provide multi-bank overview, that was an easy story to sell, that we needed ability because of course we want to own or show the data of other banks, because then we can keep that customer relation in our own channels. But sharing something to someone else, that's really a different cup of tea. And the nice thing about API management tooling, it's a technology that enables you to do both. So we knew that that story sticks, then we can also do the other story. Under the radar, we started to build the developer portal and the platform, and we launched our stuff. And when we launched the developer portal, people got to get a bit nervous, but now the channel has been there, and the developer portal, it's just there. Now it's like, it's normal. And the difficult part where we're currently in is how do you motivate more teams to get on that ride as Tiki did, and really to think about your own products in a different way, and how do you build nice APIs for them as well. And that's still a challenge, a journey that we're on.
You have one team that's doing, or at least one team that's doing this biz DevOps, where like there's a business people and developers working together on co-creating new experiences. Is that something that you would recommend others to do? Is that like the future? or that's also, well, it's always mixed, right? No matter what you do, it is always going to be pros and contras, but
if you really know where you're going, you can do Prince 2 as well, right? But then I do think that being agile and having close conversations between business and developers is valuable. Whether you always need to organize them within one team, I don't think so. As long as you are flexible and if you understand what you're doing and involve your customers in your product developments. And that's also what you saw with Tiki. To our utmost best, we developed our first version of the Tiki API in a time that the organization was still transforming into the agile way of working. That API worked quite well. And with having conversations with our customers, you also see that the team structure needs to be changed and more business people need to be involved in that API product development, and things get organized a bit differently. And I do just think it's a growing path that everybody is on. And at this point, you see that developers are more aware on what good APIs could be, should offer, but have a difficult sell towards business people in getting their story right and how you include them in your ideas. And by organizing this DevOps, it's a bit more easily to get a common understanding, but still you get the same struggles in one team. It's still difficult.
You still need to buy-in from senior management, even if you have
also
a business
person. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Because to organize biz DevOps, you need to have budget and people into your team. Yeah. Let's see.
There's a question.
To what extent do you think having a dev portal has been a checkbox as part of PSD2 compliance for banks? I do think that a lot of banks only have developer portals for compliance reasons because other banks were doing it, and you already see in their product portfolios the differences that are popping up. So once you see a bank with only PSD2 APIs in it, you see it was a check in the box. If you look at their developer portals and there are other APIs in it as well, then you see that a bank is trying to seriously convince internal management and to move into a different direction and have conversations with customers and third parties to innovate in such a way. And then at least you know that a couple of teams within such a bank is trying to transform that bank in such a direction. But like a lot of people will know and understand, a lot of banks are big companies and takes a while before such a big company is transformed into a different mindset. But you see Nordea, Deutsche Bank, ourselves, we're definitely BBVA, we're definitely deep diving into how can we use this technology in different ways as well. And yeah, you definitely see that in the API portfolios that those banks provide.
I had this really interesting talk with, I'll say somebody from a big Swiss bank. And he was like, this has been very convenient for all the Swiss banks that all of Europe has now been forced to have APIs and dev portals because they can just like wait and see what strategy is going to work. And then like whenever they see something is working, they'll be like quickly like jumping in and following, like being a rapid follower. So there's definitely some of that anti-risk sentiment in the industry. We see some smaller banks that are like, we call them compliance portals, which is like bare minimum budget, just, just put our PSD2 out there and that's it. But then also we see more like, okay, we've done this obligatory thing now, like how are we going to make money with it? We see that more and
Yes.
more also. Yeah.
Yeah, one other path that you see happening is that if you look within big banks, APIs for a long time have been a topic for IT people. And how more business-minded people were talking about these kind of topics. It's something for IT. It's not something that I need to go in depth in. And with these API products in place and the experience of building a nice developer portal and spending effort on your documentation, you can also see and show that the experience on these APIs, the API products, are creating a different traffic than our internal APIs do. So what can we learn from that, and how can we motivate internal teams to build proper APIs as well? And that's a transformation that you see. So the outside culture we've built a bit, then move into the internal culture again, and move to the outside culture again. That's a path that I see a lot of banks need to go through as well.
Do you have any chance for doing like the Amazon move? Everybody needs to have APIs now, or that's a no-no?
So the way Amazon did it was Jeff Bezos saying, "You will be fired if you don't do this."
You don't have APIs, you're fired.
Yeah, that's
that
not
only works
in the
in American
culture
companies,
to
huh?
do it that way. Yeah, it's not in the culture of as well as having such a structure, having the right escalation paths. You see that that will happen in big companies in Europe as well, although with different sentences and different incentives to move into that direction. Looking at the time though, and I know you, I know myself, and we can talk a lot. To see what the organization wants to do.
Yeah. Maybe you should come onto our podcast. Or our new podcast. You need to come onto the API Resilience podcast.
Okay.